This is episode 11 of Insight Weekly, your security overview from the past 7 days across the globe. If you enjoy our weekly podcasts, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll find the link in the comments. And also feel free to like, share and comment, ask the analysts any questions and let us know what your key takeaways were from this episode. So we'll start off with Vincent, who leads our coverage in the Americas. What have you got for us this week?
Yeah, so earlier this week, a mine was attacked in Suriname by a group of approximately 60 illegal gold miners. The mine is located in the Afabaka area of the Brokapondo district. Initially, the protesters gathered on the road outside the mine. Police was reported at the scene, but reportedly didn't engage or intervene. And then afterwards, the group of miners went to the mine itself. There were reportedly 45 workers on site at the time, and it's said that they were robbed of their cell phones by the illegal miners. The employees were then forced to flee, but no injuries were reported. Again, based on news sources, it says that police didn't intervene in the vandalism that also took place at the mine.
Has there been any incidents in other mines?
So not reported this year. This was the first major incident reported in 2020 regarding illegal gold mining in Suriname. But the activity itself within the country, we've reported several incidents back in 2019, particularly targeting the Rosebell mine, which is owned by the IM Gold Company, which is a Canadian company. And in those incidents, there were reported that illegal gold miner had been killed. There were reported several security force interventions at the mine to clear out illegal gold miners, which led to dozens of people arrested. But most significantly for the company, the IM Gold Company, is that activity were suspended for a period of time, several times, due to the number of illegal gold miners on the property, which impacts not only the business, but there were also reports back then of several hundred employees laid off until they were then rehired once mining operations resumed.
How widespread is that? Is that threat? Is it sort of localized or regional?
So it's definitely regional. In terms of illegal mining, we've reported incidents in countries as Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, and Peru. The impacts that it has are not only as we talked about, economical on the mines or anything like that. But there's also impacts regarding the environment due to mercury poisoning of water, the soil, which is a component that they use to extract gold. But there's also impacts to indigenous lands, such as in Brazil. It's also a proponent for other crimes. So in Peru, in the Madre de Dios region, where there's quite a bit of illegal mining, there's also incidents of prostitution and human trafficking, because those areas kind of create their own illicit economies to support illegal miners. And then in places like Colombia, illegal mining is also used by illegal armed groups as a way to fund their activities. In the case of the ELN or FARC dissidents, they're considered terrorist organizations. So in a way, it funds terrorism.
And you actually produced a more in-depth kind of analysis of the illegal mining as well, which is available online. I'll make that available for all our viewers if you actually want to see that. We'll go over to Viraj now.
Yeah, so earlier this week, there was a major attack in northwestern Nigeria in Kaduna State, where at least 3 villages were attacked and by bandits. 51 people were killed. The bandits accused these residents of being informants for security agencies. So far this year, there's, according to our statistics, 189 people have been killed in these banditry attacks in northwestern Nigeria, which is significantly more than northeastern Nigeria, where the Boko Haram insurgency continues. Security agencies have conducted operations which have taken the form of airstrikes, mainly in forests. These are dense areas of vegetation. There have also been talks between state government figures and these banditry groups. Since last year, I think it was in December 2019 where the UN said about 40,000 have been displaced by these attacks, many of them to Niger.
Are there any terror links to these cases of banditry?
So these attacks haven't been claimed by terrorist groups. Now in February 2020, so that was last month, there were airstrikes carried out by the Nigerian army. And according to the army, among those killed were senior Boko Haram commander. But again, this can't be confirmed.
Thank you, Viraj. Just a quick look on the platform. So I have filtered for any incidents happening after the 1st of January in Nigeria and actually used the tag Banditry, which has brought up any relevant incidents on the platform there. So regardless of what an incident is categorised as, Viraj has actually tagged these accordingly, so it's very easy to find the information that you're looking for and start picking out kind of trends and patterns within the data. Matt, you're actually going to talk to us about future incidents this week, is that right?
Yes. Well, this week we've been tracking quite a bit of activity from Greenpeace. They've been very active in targeting Barclays banks across the UK. We had information coming in of at least 2 incidents, one down in London, and of course they were quite active in targeting Barclays banks in Cardiff, Wales. Their motive behind it is essentially to target Barclays because of their support of the fossil fuel industry, which that sort of follows on from Extinction Rebellion's activities when they conducted the protests in Cambridge not too long ago, where they notably dug up the Cambridge lawn and then took some of the dirt down to a local Barclays branch and dumped the dirt inside the branch for the very same reason, Barclays being an institution which supports the fossil fuels industry. I suppose moving on to that with regards to Extinction Rebellion, we've been coming across quite a few reports of the group intends to conduct a number of protests as early as March 7 throughout the UK and throughout wider Europe. The earliest one coming up is on March 7, which will be an anti-dairy demonstration in Leeds. And then, of course, we've got further protests throughout March and all the way out to April through in London, Berlin, Munich, and also we've identified the Netherlands as a place where the group intends to conduct civil disobedience protests in order to promote their message. At the moment, the target appears to be isolating the fossil fuels industry from wider society.
So, with the Leeds protest, is there any specific target?
Haven't identified it yet, although the target appears to be a bit unique in this regard, with regard to Extinction Rebellion. Unlike the previous protests and upcoming protests, this one appears to be, as their intent implies on their posts, to be anti-dairy. So it's more targeting, I suppose, farms and anyone producing milk, which is a bit out of the ordinary. Haven't identified a specific target yet. But from what we can tell with doing a search of the Leeds area, there are several targets that they could conduct a demonstration at. It could be a manufacturing plant, or could even be a dairy farm. So, but we're keeping a close eye on it.
Thank you, Matt. Jumping again back to the platform. So obviously we don't just report on any live demonstrations, but any future demonstrations as well. So I've actually filtered using the theme for climate change activism and filtered for anything from the 1st of March up until the 31st of May. And as you can see, especially in Europe there, we've got multiple demonstrations planned by the group. And of course, the one Matt mentioned up in Leeds of the UK. You can see the full details there. So more globally, coronavirus, of course. Do we have an update for our viewers on the latest this week?
Yeah, absolutely. So past episodes have focused on Asia and Europe, but in the last week we started getting cases in Latin America. So in Mexico we've reported 5 cases, in Ecuador 10, Brazil 4, Argentina 1, Chile 2, Dominican Republic 1, and there's also been 3 cases reported in St. Barthélemy in the Caribbean. How
does that look? Sorry.
Several of these cases have been reported based on people who've come back to those countries from Italy, and the ones in Chile were a couple that had traveled the month before in Southeast Asia just likely contracted the virus from abroad and then brought it back to those countries. The numbers are still relatively low, but as was the case in several European countries, it's likely going to increase in the near future.
So in comparison to kind of last week, what do those numbers look like? Is that a significant increase?
So it's mainly began being reported last week, but some countries have already seen slight increases. So Ecuador went from 7 to 10 by the time of this recording, and Brazil went from 2 to 4. So yeah, it's slight increase, and I'm guessing, and this will likely increase over time as well.
So since last week, since our last update, we've had cases in Tunisia, in Morocco, and in Senegal as well. So that's together with existing cases in Egypt and Nigeria. So with Nigeria, they are conducting contact tracing for over 100 passengers that arrived in the same aircraft as the initial case. We have had cases of, I suppose you could say, discrimination in Kenya and South Africa. There's a journalist in South Africa that reported discriminatory slurs directed towards her. And in Kenya, there was this Chinese construction company that were forced to abandon work because local residents accused them of, suspected them to have coronavirus and wanted them to be tested. There was also a case in Nairobi in the Kibera slum where South Asian couple were again accused of having coronavirus, and in that last case there was a video released being shared on social media. So you could see that it was a moment of heightened tension that could have led to a physical attack, but that wasn't the case.
Yeah, so we actually obviously mentioned in last week's episode about the increase in hate crimes with regards to coronavirus. What about in Europe? Have we seen any change there?
Well, amongst the reports we've been getting of course, the virus spreading quite significantly. There's been some similar incidents to what Viraj was mentioning there. At least one incident in Belgium of a Chinese lady being subject to racial slurs and coronavirus related slurs. Elsewhere, though, there's been noticing actually some wider impacts on business. Of course, there's been the collapse, the firm Flybe going into administration. Oh, and part of that is in relation to the spread of the coronavirus. Elsewhere in the aviation industry, actually, as well, has been Lufthansa. Just came across an incident where they have decided to ground approximately 150 of their aircraft. Their wider fleet is approximately 770. So that's fairly new reporting. So it could see some wider impacts on Lufthansa's operations from there. Also, in Switzerland, recently there was a major business in Lindau where they confirmed that one of their employees contracted coronavirus. The company decided to shut down operations in that particular office, sending all 400 employees to work from home. Luckily, the majority of the employees, a lot of their work is IT based, so the impact on the business's operations at the moment doesn't appear to be too widespread.
Yeah, you mentioned aviation, and similar in Latin America, we see flights for the LATAM, the airline, suspend flights between Sao Paulo and Milan in Italy due to the cases that were reported. So I think those flights are suspended until mid-April. So yeah, definitely a wider impact.
Yeah, I think over the next couple of weeks, we'll see quite a few countries around the world taking aggressive measures to try and curb the spread of the virus, and that will certainly affect economies in tourism, economies that rely on tourism in Africa. So,
and it's something that we will, of course, continue to monitor here at Intelligence Fusion. There's various tools on our platform that can ensure that you get the information timely, and it's all reliable and accurate. If you'd like to speak to us a little bit more about how we can help with that, then please feel free to get in touch. But other than that, I think we're all wrapped up for this week. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.